All right, the Georgia Bulldogs are 5-0, and it is Auburn week, one of the most important games of the entire season each and every year. They're Georgia's rival on the SEC West, right? This used to be a series that was one of the closest in college football, the longest rivalry in the South. This is a big deal, although Georgia has run away with this series. As of late, Georgia leads the series 62-56 with 8 ties. Georgia's won 5 in a row. Auburn hasn't won in Athens since 2005, a game that Georgia should have won. So Georgia has taken control of this rivalry, and I don't think they're letting it go anytime soon. I do think Georgia is going to win the game, and I think they're going to win the game comfortably. But right now, the line is at 29.5. Georgia didn't score 29 points last week against a Missouri defense that I don't think is as good as Auburn's defense. So while I do think Georgia is going to win the game, and I don't think there's going to be too much drama towards the end of the game, I don't think they're going to beat Auburn by 29.5 points. But this video is basically me asking y'all, how bad is Georgia going to beat Auburn? I can't see any scenario where Auburn comes into Athens and wins this game, not against a Kirby Smart team that is coming off a national championship, not in Athens. I think Auburn has a nice little team. I mean, let's go over their record real quick. They're 3-2, which I think is what everyone expected out of Auburn to this point. They beat Mercer 42-16. Not impressive. They beat San Jose State 24-16. Not impressive. I don't know if anyone really watched that game when it was happening. It was ugly. They lost to Penn State, a Penn State team that is better than I thought. They're still Penn State. I can't give them too much credit because I think eventually they are going to fall off. But they lost 41-12. That was an ass kicking to Penn State. They beat Missouri in an ugly, ugly win, 17-14, and then lost last week to an LSU team that is playing better since they're just incredible loss to Florida State in that opening weekend. They did lose by 4 points, 21-17. Auburn's got some guys who can play defense. Owen Papo, Wesley Steiner, Colby Wooden. These are guys who grew up in Georgia. A lot of these guys did not have an offer from Georgia, and Auburn was the best place for them to go to. Of course, they did recruit Owen Papo for a while and then decided, hey, you know what? Nakobe Dean is better. Let's go after him instead. But make no mistake, there are a lot of Auburn players who love playing against Georgia, who have that Georgia chip on their shoulder. You know, they never got a scholarship to Georgia. They wanted to, had to go to Auburn instead. So they're going to come to Athens. They're going to look to put up a fight. And I do think they have some nice players. Tank Bigsby, one of the best running backs in college football, big dog post guy. We've known Tank Bigsby for a long, long time. He's rushed for 326 yards this year. Robbie Ashford, a guy who Kirby Smart spoke about to reporters on Monday. I'm going to give you those quotes in a minute, but he can play. He's rushed for 223 yards so far. He's thrown for 706 and 3 touchdowns. He appears to be Auburn's guy. TJ Finley was not the guy. Georgia was going to destroy that kid if he were the quarterback coming into this game. Robbie Ashford, playing a little better and better. I like his skill set. He's still going to have a really tough time against the Georgia defense. Here's what Kirby Smart said about Robbie yesterday, I believe. That's a young man we recruited. Did you? Not really. And came over and visited us several times. That is true. He is a tremendous athlete. Coach Brian McClendon had him at Oregon when he was there. I talked about how phenomenal an athlete he is. He's a really good athlete. He worked out with receivers and athletes, didn't even work out with quarterbacks during a lot of their conditioning program. You see it on tape. He is really special in terms of twitch, being elusive. His best plays sometimes are plays that end up being broken plays. The guy can take off and really hurt you, beat you with his arms, especially on scrambles. They had a huge play last week off a scramble play, so being disciplined in your rush lanes, being disciplined in your coverage responsibilities when a quarterback scrambles will probably happen more often this week than most weeks because of the athlete he is. So he's not a pocket passer. When he's in the pocket, he's going to look for one guy. If it's not there, he's going to run around, scramble, try to make plays outside of the pocket with his legs. So you do have to be disciplined. And for a Georgia defense that hasn't played their best the last 2 weeks, looked like they were phenomenal coming out of the gates. But this is a defense that is still learning, still developing. They're still good. And I still think they're one of the best in the SEC, maybe in college football, probably in college football. But Robbie Ashford will have the ability to test them some, I think. Of course, Tank Bigsby is the guy they have to focus on. Tank Bigsby has not really run through Georgia so far in his Auburn career. Here's what Kirby had to say about him. He's explosive. He's a great guy out of the backfield to catch the ball. He catches screens well. He's vertical in the run game. He's tough, yards after contact. He's one of those backs that, like the good ones, they get better with their carries. He's extremely physical and runs with a low pad level. And he's one of these particular SEC backs that you better bring your lunch pail when you come to tackle them. No doubt about that. I think he's the best player on their team. He's a guy that Georgia's going to have to contain. But at the end of the day, Georgia's more talented. They're deeper. They have the better coaching staff. They've got the experience. They're a winning program with a winning DNA. And again, they have a better coaching staff than Auburn does. So if you go down the box and check, Georgia's got all the checks. There's nothing that Auburn has that is better than Georgia. They have to play their A game while Georgia brings their C game. That's the only way Auburn wins this game. Maybe they keep it close for the half. They come out and they play tough. But there's no possible reasoning for me to think that Auburn is going to win this game in Athens. They can't do it. And again, I don't think it's going to be by 29.5 points, but I'm thinking Georgia wins by 14 or 17, and maybe it looks better than the score. But either way, the offensive line is going to have to play better. Kirby Smart talked about that as well. On the offensive line, it's not a lack of execution or scheme. He's covering up for Stacey Searles there. No doubt about it. They didn't play anything different. It's physicality, winning up front, and more than that, giving them an opportunity to be successful. Sometimes that falls on me as a coach, on us as coaches, not just them. So it's not a lack of execution. Sometimes you get whipped. Sometimes you get whipped, and sometimes we didn't. And when you didn't, you got to capitalize. There are some big runs in there, and then we fumbled the ball on a big run. We had big runs in the fourth quarter. The offensive line, you could say, didn't allow them to get the ball back, so that was a big positive. When they had every guy on their team in the box and we blocked them and got first downs. So there's a lot of positives, and we'll draw on the ability to come back from that. So, yes, Georgia's offensive line did play really well in the fourth quarter. But he said, hey, it's not an execution thing. It's not a scheme thing. They just got whipped up front. Now, Auburn does have some quality defenders, and I do think their defense, has played pretty well other than that Penn State game. So Georgia's going to have to execute, and they're going to have to be physical. We've seen them be physical and dominate opposing defenses before. They really have in the past 2 weeks. They're going to have to do it against Auburn. I don't think Georgia is going to light up the scoreboard. I think they'll get in the 30s. But the offensive line is going to have to play well if Georgia wants to dominate them like they did against Oregon and South Carolina. The game is a game of trenches. It's a line of scrimmage game, still is. And Georgia's going to have to step up there on the offensive line. On the Auburn defense, Kirby said they're fast, physical, they're playing really hard. 2 elite edge guys, some athletic linebackers. They played really, really hard. I mean, just call it what it is. They scratch off and play with confidence. They're flying around. I mean, I know almost every single player on that defense, and they're good football players. Christian Robinson leading that defense. He knows Kirby Smart well, a guy who used to play for Georgia, has coached in the SEC for a long time. Another big dog post guy who, when he's looking for Georgia football information and recruiting, he comes to dog post. I firmly believe that. But either way, this is an Auburn team that I think has to fix the leadership. I think they have a leadership problem more than a talent problem. I think they have a depth problem as well. They've got some really good players who are starting. I don't think they have a ton of depth behind them, whereas Georgia does. Not as much depth as last year, but Georgia still is a pretty deep team overall. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why I see them not only winning, but pulling away towards the end of this game. So, again, Auburn can move the ball a little bit. I don't think Georgia's going to shut them out. I don't think they're going to hold them to single digits. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Auburn's going to get into the end zone at least once, maybe a couple field goals. Although if you're kicking field goals against Georgia, you're going to lose. Ask Missouri, who kicked a bunch of them, still found a way to lose the game. You have to get in the end zone against Georgia if you want to beat them. And Georgia's defense is not letting that happen often at all. And when they do let it happen, they don't let it happen twice. Against quality opponents, really. When it does seem that Georgia's playing down to the level of competition outside of South Carolina and Oregon, but this is a big game. This is a game that Georgia fans care about. Again, they're taking the series and running away with it. I know Georgia fans have to love that. They've won 5 in a row. They've got the thumb against Auburn, going for 6. And it's always a good time when you beat Auburn, even though they're not a top 25 team. They might have a coaching change at the end of the year. It's still a program that's just, they can't get to where they want, and it might take some time. But beating Auburn is always key. It's always a goal for the season. Kirby Smart wants to beat Auburn. These players want to, and you can't let Auburn come into Athens and win. It's not going to happen on Saturday. And I do think Georgia gets the win convincingly and kind of runs away with it in the fourth quarter. What do you think? Drop a comment in the comment section below. Head over to Dog Post for the latest the rest of the week. We've got a lot of good stuff coming. I have to write a story, or I'm going to write a story this week about the insights of the blackout game against Auburn 2007. I spoke to multiple players on that team. Gave me some great quotes, so make sure you check that out towards the end of the week. Thanks for watching this video as always. Stay tuned to the next one coming up right now, and I'll see you over on Dog Post.